Welcome, everyone. We are live today, first Easter day, and I'm so happy to be here from the Netherlands together with Ashok from Canada and Bobby Umar, also from Canada. So, very honored to have you both with me here today. Thank you for coming because it is a festive day, but the both of you made time to show up and talk about a very important topic, which is personal leadership in the generation gap, and how the influence of social media, is for this generation. We're going to talk about that today. So, introducing Bobby, for who doesn't know him, you should know him. Please visit his profile. You are an inspirational speaker and coach, and you champion authentic connection and heart-based leadership. I love that. You're a TEDx speaker. You've done 5 TEDx talks, so you can share a little bit about that if you want. And you have over 150,000 social media followers. And you're a recognized influencer and thought leader in networking. So welcome, Bobby, to the show. Maybe you want to add something to your introduction, something I haven't said.
Sure. I mean, I definitely am a speaker by trade. For 17 years, I've traveled around the world. I've done 1,000 keynotes across 4 continents. But, and I've been to Poland, so I see Farouk there. I spoke in Poland, which was amazing. I did that. That was one of my favorite speeches I've ever done. So I really loved that one. And, in the pandemic, I had to pivot because speaking was kind of not there anymore. And so I started doing more coaching and online programs. So I digitized my personal branding program, a storytelling one, and I have a thought leadership one. So I did that. And then the other thing is I'm now a huge advocate for social audio, growing a brand on Clubhouse to 13,000 followers and a club called Thought Leadership Brand Club to 26,000 members. But I also do Twitter Spaces. I do LinkedIn audio. So I'm a big social audio advocate because I think it's one of the best tools we have to have more deeper, authentic, and trust-building conversations. So that's kind of also what I'm doing a lot of. So I do enjoy that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And that actually brings us right into the topic today, because during the pandemic, many people had to go digital with their work, right? But what we're going to talk about today is how is this for our future generations, because they had to adjust so much. If you look at our childhood, I grew up without internet. I'm actually quite grateful for that because I used to play outside all day long in nature. And I feel really good in that. But if you're growing up today, you have to also know their social media and how do you present yourself. So it's not just, how do you go to high school or middle school. You have social media too. What's your digital presence about? And how is that for this future generation? So for the audience, if you have any questions about this topic, any challenges regarding this, maybe with your kids, I know I have them, and I know you have too, Bobby. We can talk about that too. And Ashok, I'm sure you have tons to share about this too. For the audience, please let us know which country are you based, where are you watching from? We're always curious, where is our audience? And it's all over the world. It's so fantastic. And if you have any questions about personal leadership in the generation gap, social media with your children, put the questions in the comments and we will do our best to answer them. So Ashok, let's start with you. Do you see in your practice a lot of problems with this, with the younger generation facing problems with this issue?
Well, I think what's happened with the younger generation is that we've given them a tool that, as you said, I didn't have as a child, and maybe we didn't have as children. And that is a tool that's extremely powerful. It's so powerful, it creates a certain level of necessity for responsibility. The other thing it does, though, it creates a certain amount of uncertainty. Because what's happened to a certain degree is the power that we have to have a smartphone and connect with people also creates an uncertainty in how many people want to connect with us. And am I popular? Am I valuable? Am I noticed? Am I attractive? Am I smart? Am I funny? Am I a good entertainer? And even I, as a 60-year-old now, is I started on social media really when I was 60, and I'm 62 now. I can't not look at my phone anymore. It's become a kind of a funny, almost addictive property. And I think the problem with that is that, who's noticing me? And then suddenly I have to go out and meet people for real. And it's like, oh, no, this is what it's all about. It's about real connections. And I worry about the younger generation missing out on real connections and worrying about the kind of connections they're achieving on social media, exclusive of that reality. So I'd love to hear Bobby's comment on this.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I look at is, the I'm Generation X, and so one of the things that we know about ourselves is that we are digital immigrants, right? So as digital came in, I had my I had my first email when I was 20. I had internet came in when I was 35 or 40. I started learning more. Social media. I started learning about that, and so I've been kind of learning as I go and doing the best I can. Whereas the younger generation, millennials and that, are digital natives, and they grew up with it. So, excuse me. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that because they have grown up with this, they also have insights that are better than us. Like we have more fears about it than they do, and so they actually are better at managing that fear-based mindset when it comes to digital. That's the first thing. But the second thing is when you talk about personal, excuse me, sorry. When you talk about personal leadership, right, it starts with us, right? So I take it upon myself to really understand how social media works, to understand the digital landscape, and to find that balance. I mean, perfect example is, how I manage my emails was the first thing I had to learn, right? Because you get email over. We all have email, but we're also email overwhelmed, right? So how do I manage my inbox, and how do I do that type of stuff? And then, when phones came in, I find that devices like phones and iPads are much harder to navigate, particularly when you have the notifications on. So, learning to turn on notifications and, balance that time. I don't take my phone to bed. I don't take my phone to dinner. And I try, and I have to be that leader for my kids because I have to learn. Now, part of it is also acknowledging the kids that I do struggle with this sometimes. So I tell the kids, look, I struggle with, turning off the laptop or working, on weekends and things like that. Because I'm an entrepreneur too, so that's a whole other dynamic, right? Because I feel like I have things to do. Like here I am now on Easter, and the kids are downstairs playing, but I'm doing this. But on weekends doing no, but for me doing an hour or whatever, it's not that big a deal, right? It's but if I went off for 4 or 5 hours, they'd be like, "Daddy, where are you?" Like, come on, let's go have some fun. I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah, so I think but I'm actually very open with the vulnerability with my kids, just like I am on social media. I talk about my challenges as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as a binge eater, all the things that I with my son having tech addiction. So I think I'm very open with them about that. And I think they do appreciate that because they know that Daddy's not perfect, and he's acknowledging that they may have similar struggles with that. And so for me, I think my wife is worse with the the digital with the phone. She's always on her phone, and I think she finds that it's noticeable, and I also I see that. So I think the personal leadership starts with us, which will then fuse down to your parents. I mean, it's like if you're a smoker and you tell your kids don't smoke, yeah, but you smoke, right? So right. Similarly, they see us, they know. Like my kids are at the age now, 11 and 13, where they're like, they know our little idiosyncrasies and things about us that are good and maybe not so good. And they know they play on it, right? They point it out, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, sorry. One of the things I did early on when I got my phone was, and when the kids were growing up, was I put alarms in my phone at 5:30 p.m. every day called Super Daddy Mode, and it would pop up, and it was a reminder for me that the kids are coming home, and I need to get off the laptop and start making dinner and focus on family time. I'm really big on those types of things, so I have those reminders every single day. Super Daddy Mode is coming up, and I need to, so I got to get into Super Daddy Mode, and I find that those reminders to be very, very powerful for me. So, and then going back to the discussion of the kids, I mean, so I think there's two things. One is, of course, it's our responsibility. Digital is part of life now. So it's our responsibility to teach them the right way to integrate it. There was a conversation about 20 years ago or 15 years ago about, how do our kids are on their digital cameras and they're constantly taking videos and doing camera work and things like that. And I remember talking to a bunch of people, grown-ups who were worried. And they said, well, look, digital cameras are here to stay. So teach your kids how to use these digital cameras properly, without, and responsibly and safely. And same with social media. We have to teach our kids how to use these things safely. So I took my kids to this whole, safety with online devices and what to post, what not to post. Is it necessary? Is it bullying? Talking about all those different things. I think that's incredibly important to to teach our kids. But then the second thing, which is the harder one, is how do we build trust in our kids? We teach them, but then we have to let them go. We can't just constantly monitor them all the time, because they're going to go with their friends and do other stuff. So to me, a big thing is open communication. I always am big, like, whatever it is you're doing, let's just be open and honest about it. Let's talk about it. Okay, you were online and someone said something to you. I want you to always feel comfortable telling daddy what's going on with your friends, with technology, with everything. Let's just talk about these things and always have that love and communication support, because our job is to be there to support them. And I think that is incredibly important particularly with the kids. So with social media, I'm teaching my kids to be responsible. And, my kids do complain because my son's like, Daddy, everybody has. So my son's a grade 8, and he's like, Daddy, everybody has a cell phone except for maybe 5 or 6 kids in the entire school, and one of them's me. And I told him, I said, well, I'm sorry. I told him, here's my thoughts on this. I think that, when I see people on their phones all the time, do you think that most people are addicted to their phones? He's like, yeah. I said, I don't think that's a really healthy way to go. And, and I said, what do you need it for? He's like, well, I want to check stuff. I said, okay, well, you can check them on the computers. You can check them when you come home. If you need to call someone, you go to your teachers. I mean, at a certain point, you will get one. Absolutely. But I want you to demonstrate responsibility right now because he has a laptop. I said, so demonstrate responsibility with your laptop. If you're going to play a video game, you agree to when you're going to play 1 hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, and then you get off when you say you will. Because when you don't, that tells me that, you're not doing it responsibly. And they say, you should do the same thing too, Daddy. I'm like, yeah, I will. So you want me to get off the laptop or off my phone? Done. I'll do it. And so whenever you need me, I get off my phone right away or get off my laptop right away. And I take care of things. So it's, there's a lot there. There's a lot of variables, and no one's going to get it right. But I think that being mindful of it and being the best personal leader yourself will go a long way. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but I wanted to make sure I covered everything.
No, I think there are a lot of value points in what you're saying, and I recognize so much, like with my own kids. I recognize, like, my son was spending a lot of time on his tablets too, watching TikTok, watching YouTube. And, well, I got worried at a certain point. His grades started dropping, right? And so I sent him to homework class because I have some days where I have to be in the office, right? I'm not at home. They're at home after school. And then that's a challenge. So I took a solution. I sent him to homework class. It cost me money every month, but okay. It helps him because there you have to put away your phone. He can do his homework. When he comes home, he's done, and then it's family time, and then you can do what you want. And also, he found this great hobby. I was sharing this with Ashok over WhatsApp a couple of days ago. Send him a little video of my son playing the guitar. He is now loving this so much, and I see that there's more of a balance coming. Like, the tablet is going down, the guitar is going up in his interests. Now everywhere he goes, he takes his guitar. He doesn't take his tablet anymore. So, and those are things that I think can help in raising your children and really balancing the real life and the social media life. There has to be a right balance, but it's there to stay too. And the digital world is only getting more things are getting digitalized. So it's not becoming less. So I think you're absolutely right when you're saying you need to be very mindful and teach your children how to do with this, because it's here to stay. It's not going away.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that for the most part, we have to figure that out and do that. I love that you did with the kids. I mean, I had an issue with my son, and we discovered we talked about tech addiction, right? We said that we think you have tech addiction. And then what happened was he had a report card, and normally he gets A's, A pluses, which is great. But then his 96 in science went down to a 60. Now that's a big drop. 36 points. That's a big drop, and so we had an emergency meeting with our son and my wife and I, and we talked to him. I said, let's talk about this. And I said, I think that you may be struggling with it. And we found out that he was always on playing this specific video game on his laptop. And he was not doing his homework or assignments because he was always, when we gave him time to do his homework, he just kept playing this game all the time. And he kept hiding it from us too. And every time I walk over, he would switch back to his screen. And I'm like, why is this presentation taking so long? Things like that. And So the teachers told us what was going on, and then we talked to him, and I tried to explain to him in terms of food. I said, look, I said, son, I'm a binge eater. I'm a food addict. So let me tell you how my addiction works. When I wake up in the morning, I think about food. When I go traveling, I think about where I can go eat, and I see restaurants, and I plan my entire meals in my head because it's always there. And then when I get the food, I sometimes lose control of where I am, the time spent, and the amount that I'm eating. And so those are signs of, and then and I don't do anything else. So in terms of, I don't try new foods. I eat the same stuff over and over again. And so I asked him a couple questions. I said, look, so when you wake up in the morning, do you think about getting on Roblox right away? And he's like, yes. I said, okay. And what if we say, no, you can't have a laptop? Then what do you do? Do you do something else? Do you play with Lego? Do you read books? Do you watch a movie? Do you play with the Rubik's Cube? Or do you play music? Because he's a violinist. He's like, no, I just sit there on the sofa or on my bed. I'm like, okay, what are you waiting for? I'm waiting for you to wake up so I can ask you to play Roblox. I said, okay. I said, okay. And then I said, when I give you Roblox time and you agree to get off at 90 minutes or an hour or whatever, do you always do that? He's like, have you done that successfully? He's like, no, I've never done that successfully. And I said, how long does it take you to get off? Is it 10 minutes or is it longer? He's like, it's longer, anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes to get off the laptop after we told them to be on the time. And so I said, based on all that, like particularly the one where you have no more interest anymore, like that to me is really concerning because you used to be into everything. And now you do nothing. You've stopped reading books. You've stopped doing the other stuff. And he finally said, okay, based on that, it sounds like I have a lot of those symptoms you talked about. I said, I'm glad you said so. So now how are we going to deal with this? Because me and mommy want to help you. We're going to help you. And we worked with him and came up with a plan on how to deal with it. And and I said, like, I know you want a cell phone, but like, this is an example. We need to get this under control. And so I think, working with him, getting him to tell us what help he needs, to acknowledge the challenges, to acknowledge his feelings, went a long way. So we're currently on a 6-week ban of the Roblox, and we're supposed to see where we're at this weekend. So we'll have a talk with him about that. And then the other thing I brought up, and this is something that's important here, is that the pandemic also is a very, very specific thing because, kids were intensely on machines, right? Kids were intensely on machines for 2 years. And so that's a whole other thing. And so one of the things I'm thinking about is how do we get out of that? How do we get us back? So I think that I'm more into let's go outside more than I used to be. Let's not do screen time, like we used to, because during the pandemic, like we'd watch tons of Netflix and watch a lot of videos like that too. Like, let's just get out there and do more things. Let's talk to people. Let's go take walks. And so, I think for me, because we had 2 years of this intensity, I want to spend another 2 years of getting us back to a better place because I have no idea how this has affected the kids, but I definitely am more mindful of that for the next 2 years to get them to do even more intently the stuff outside of the technology digital landscape.
Absolutely. Ashok, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, well, just to make a point here, in November 1975, my math teacher passed me back my test, and she said she was very surprised because I also got about 30% less than what I would normally get in a trigonometry test. And what had happened is that about a month before that, I bought my first electric guitar. And I was spending way too much time in my room playing it and plinking away on my guitar, and obviously not enough time with my trigonometry studies. So I think what we're saying here is boundaries. We have to teach boundaries, and the problem with the general problem with the internet, it's a system of highways and roads with no traffic lights.
Oh yeah,
there aren't really boundaries there, and I think that whatever the technology is, I think as Bobby is indicating very, very well today, it's up to us to provide leadership on those boundaries.
Yeah.
Because with any addiction, whether it's alcohol or heroin or gambling or food, it can become so preoccupying that the person will stop living their normal life and start engaging in their addictive life. And that's what we don't want to have happen. As we've also said, there's no way this is going to disappear. We have to embrace it. We have to learn to use the power of it because it is extremely useful. I'm lost without my smartphone. But at the same time, we have to make sure that the boundaries are healthy, especially for developing minds in the younger generation.
Absolutely agree. And I think it's so important that we're talking about this because I think many people struggle with this. We also have a question coming in from Bashir Towerdale. Thank you for watching. And he says also, and I think that's also important, how genuine is this digital presence? And is there a cloud around the same or pressure leading to self-low confidence? And I think that's another aspect of social media that we can talk about a little bit today. Because you see all those happy people on social media with their beautiful lives and their beautiful houses and their happy lives and their beautiful car and everything is great and happy. It's a big hooray show sometimes. While in fact, when you talk to those people and you know them, you know that they struggle with stuff too, like we all do, right? But if you don't realize that, it can be really depressing seeing all those happy, perfect people. And then you think to yourself, wow, I'm not that pretty, or oh, my life is not that great, and you're still feeling depressed. And I think that's another aspect that we really need to protect this generation for too. I know I do that with my kids too. For instance, if my 11-year-old daughter gets this nasty comment or so on social media, she sometimes tries to sell. She makes these little bracelets, and between their friends, they're selling bracelets to each other, right? And then kids can react negatively, and I see it affects her. And then I try to teach her, like I do here on LinkedIn, when someone is trolling me, please don't spend your time on that person, and that reaction, it's not about you. This is about them. This is their behavior. They're probably having some problem that they're dealing with, and that's why they're reacting so negatively. Just delete the message, block the person, and go ahead and be happy with, go along with your day. That's what I try to teach them. But it is for the kids. It's really challenging, and I'm sure, like Beth here is saying, so how genuine is this digital presence? There's a question, it's not always that realistic what we see on social media.
It's interesting. I was out for dinner last night and visiting a longtime friend in Montreal. And at a certain point, the kids were talking to each other, but, we were talking for 3 hours. So at some point they said, my daughter said, can I have your phone? I said, sure. So I let her have my phone. And she was reading my Instagram posts and started reading. And then she said, Daddy, like you share a lot of really interesting stories. So like, how come I never knew about this story or this one? And I'm like, oh, well, like I said, well, I often share lots of stories. And he's like, and then you wrote a poem for mommy. I can't believe that. Like, and so she's 11, she's reading this stuff, but she saw that I wrote, very personal stories and even vulnerable stories. And, she was like, why do you do that? I said, well, because, I think all of us, I said, how you write in your journal? She's like, yeah. I said, same thing. This is my digital journal. I share my life, talk about what I'm going through, and it helps me process my emotions, and it goes a lot better. And I said, do you feel better when you write things down in your journal? She said, yeah. I said, well, that's what I'm doing too. And she's like, oh, okay, well, that's good. I'm glad that you're able to do that. And so it was interesting to have her go through all the different stories on my, and she read the car tire pumping story too on Instagram. And she was reading all this. And it's like, oh, I didn't even know about this. You didn't tell me that Niall had pumped the tires. I said, yeah, well, I mean, and she's like, well, you got to tell me more of these stories. I'm like, oh, sure. We'll tell you more stories. No problem. You have to just ask us and we'll talk about these stories. So, I think that's really important. And I think that we also, monitor her messenger stuff on Messenger Kids. And, she's really good. Like she's good with interacting with her peers. So I'm very proud of her. And I think that she's doing quite well. But I think that balance in letting people know, being real and being who you are and being open about that, I think that's really great. Again, it all comes from leadership from us.
We need to set the right example, right, Ashok?
Right.
Yeah, I think the other issue too, and Bobby's implying this, but I'm going to make it obvious now, is that we've changed the definition of privacy. And I know that since I've been on social media for like almost 2 years now, I'm telling LinkedIn, for example, things I would never tell someone if I sat next to them on an airplane for a few hours. And that's an interesting process that, I'm a total introvert and I'm shy as all heck. But if on social media, people are thinking, oh my gosh, he's so extroverted. And I'm thinking, you don't know me. That's not me. So we're actually changing our definition of privacy. And I really wonder how that's affecting, especially young kids who are introverted and shy and wouldn't want to speak to somebody, but suddenly on LinkedIn or in their case, Facebook or Instagram, they might have thousands of followers, but would they actually talk to that person if they were on a field trip with them or if they're in the
Yeah.
cafeteria, for example?
Yes. That's a
Well,
big
I was trying.
there. And there's actually a comment. Sorry, Bobby. There's actually a comment coming in relating to this from Lakita Gail Dutan. Thank you so much for watching. And that's regarding to this, like walking with the phone in your hands, right, and not looking up, like crossing the street. So first, it's dangerous for traffic. Please watch out. Look up. But I see that a lot. I even see people riding their bikes with their phones, talking. You get a fine for that, but still people do it, right? But it's also so disconnecting to the real world. They talk to their phone and to people, and then but not having that real conversation. And are shy to in real life. There's a disbalance there.
People driving with their cell phones.
Yeah. And I think that, when it comes to digital presence and digital activity, I always talk about, even with, corporate and executive clients, there's a difference between personal and private, right? So you have to distinguish between those two things, right? So for example, when my wife lost her job, she talked about how she felt. She didn't diss the company. When I talk about my kids, I don't tell people where their school is. I just talk about what's happening at school. So I don't let people know where their school is. When if someone gets a divorce and they want to, you don't dish your spouse. You talk about the feelings of being divorced. And so it's important for you to distinguish between those two things. I can talk about those. And now there are instances where something's really toxic, and you may want to call it out. But in general, there's certain things you keep private, and there's certain things that you can still be personal without sharing private stuff. And so that's something I'm also teaching my kids to know the difference. So if Raya has something to do with her friend, right, she should have told her, you don't talk about that person in a really negative way. You talk to us about it and we deal with it, because she had an issue with one of her friends. And so, but that's not something you should be posting about or talking about. That's something that you keep internal. You can say to your friends, hey, I'm feeling kind of down today. I would love some kind of love and support. And that's okay. Or if you have a private Zoom call with your best friend, you want to talk to her about that, that's okay, because you need someone to talk to about these things. And that's totally fine too. But not doing it in the public forums, because the kids are on these Microsoft Teams for school and Discord forums. And that's where you don't talk about that stuff, okay? Because you don't want to air that stuff out.
Yeah, but they really need to learn. We need to set the right example and set boundaries for them. I know, like sometimes they have these class apps groups on WhatsApp, and they can be quite rough there too with their comments, or and sometimes you have to really intervene. So I'm happy there's a teacher there, but I do look at it. And it's not like every day or something, but I do encourage my son, talk to me when there's something going on. He's quite of an introvert, so that's a challenge. But I do monitor that, just to keep track of how is everything going there. Is the atmosphere okay? Because if it's not, if it's affecting your kid and you don't know about it, you also need to monitor your children, I think, to a certain point. You can't protect them all the time, but, just be there for them and create that open communication where they feel happy and safe to share things with you. Now, Moses Collins is actually commenting. We are talking about being real and being vulnerable. And he is saying, well, we need to learn to keep many things in private, just like getting likes, too many comments, and we should not share anything into the world. But I think, it's really good to do share some things in the world, but keep it balanced. Not
it's about
attention. Personal details.
Yeah. I mean, it's about attention, right? What is my intention to share about my binge eating, my weight loss? It's not to get likes. It's for me to mentally process what I'm going through and to share a message with people that maybe there's some out there who are silent and listening in, because 90% of people don't comment or say anything or like anything. They just read it, and you get a private message from them 5 years later saying, I really appreciate you sharing that because I've struggled too. And that's what the intent is, right? And I also think every single person has their own level of what the balance is. I certainly am far more vulnerable than other people. And I don't tell people to be like me. Like, don't talk about your, I talk about it openly because I'm very good at it and I'm very confident talking about it. And I know it helps people. Other people, who are like, let's say a really nervous executive, I'll just say, look, I'm not saying you have to be like me, but you could say, Tell a personal story about something tell us about a time when you screwed up when you were 19 years old, what you learned from it. And that's it. It was 20, 30 years ago. So what do you care? Like, just share a story about something you learned, and it was a long time ago, and what you learned from it. And that's going to benefit your audience, and you're going to be able to create some great content. And that's it. And don't even worry about the stuff that I'm doing.
Absolutely. Just want to go into this comment at Moses. Thanks for watching, Moses. Really appreciate you taking time to comment and dive into the conversation. He's saying too much of anything is bad indeed. And nowadays, many people are in their laptops or in their cell phones or tabs most of the time. We do not have much of physical activities. We do not play outdoors, do not even talk to each other at home situations sometimes. And this culture needs to change. And I absolutely agree with that. Although I think, when you have like family abroad, it can be actually quite amazing. Now that you have video calling, is a possibility to really stay connected to people. But there needs to be a good balance in digital life and real life. But thank you so much, Moses, for...
Yeah, and I think I struggle with this, right? I mean, I personally struggle with that, right? I mean, being overweight and not being physically active, it's hard for me to go out and want to do sports or go for a hike or play badminton. And so I'm feeling very personally responsible for this, particularly with my kids, that I'm not setting a good example. And I personally struggle with that. I have a hard time with that. I'm good with balancing the technology, and I'm good with using technology to, call grandma on the West Coast and call their other grandparents with FaceTimes and things like that, and doing it every once in a while to maintain that connection. But for me, that the physical activity outdoor thing is hard. And so I have to really, really work at it to try to do that. It is an effort. I'm struggling with that too. And because of that, my kids get less physical activity too. So I try really hard to program them and give them opportunities to do a physical activity, dancing and sports and whatnot. But I also need to set a better example. So we bought badminton rackets, and I remember I said I had a talk with my son. I also had a talk with my daughter. And the idea was, let's get more physical and active. So we agreed to start looking for a place to play badminton as a family. And so, and then she called me and I was like, Daddy, you said you would do it. What's going on? And I'm like, oh, no, here, I looked up, I already did the research. Here's where they are. We just have to go there. So let's plan this next weekend. Let's go and make it happen.
Ashok, you wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment just to bounce off what Bobby was saying about sharing. And I've been a psychiatrist for almost 40 years now. And one of the questions that people ask me when they come to see me is, am I normal? And one of the ways that we know that we're normal is that we share our feelings and stories with each other.
Yeah.
And we've seen this in so many different aspects of just simply being a human being, is feeling this way normal. And one of the value in sharing is that it's called universality. We can know that our feeling or our response to a situation is normal. And if it isn't normal, we can also know how to make it more normal, or to certainly make it more acceptable in our culture. And when we do have an experience that we know it might be a shameful one, especially, that is in fact normal, and then we can actually use each other to congregate, to strengthen each other, because there's always strength in the tribe. And I can say something like AA or any support structure that there is, especially for addictions. But this is what the upcoming generation needs to hear from us. What are the normal levels of balance to use our technology, and how much more do we need to be normal in order to get together and do things like play badminton, just have a conversation? Because just the simple question of how long is a chat? Well, is a chat just 5 minutes, or is a chat 2 hours? And so these things have changed because of social media.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, this reminds me what you're talking about, Ashok, that I do have grown-up kids too. Like my two daughters are 24, 22 now. And they often talk about this one vacation. I think it was 2007. I have a combined family, right? And this was our first combined family vacation. We went to Croatia, to Pula. We went to this beach there, and they all had these big blow-up tires where they could float in the sea with. And they were all floating together on the waves, getting back to the beach, getting back. And it's years later now, but they still talk about this vacation as one of the best family vacations. And this all had to do with spending time together, spending quality time together and doing some sort of physical activity. And it's one of the best memories that they have, so, and I'm very grateful for that's what they remember, and that's, yeah. And I always think about that. It's like the little things you do together that can be so important later on in your memories too, looking back.
The power of inflated tubing.
Yes. It's a lot of work when you have 4 kids and you need to inflate 4 of those tires, I'm telling you, but it was amazing. Okay, so we have another comment coming in from Essayed Youssef. Thank you for watching. And he says, in my opinion, I guess we need to add new terms in our lives, like offline time management, and learn how to prioritize our interests. And I think that's very true. So on one hand, we need to really use this digital age to our advantage, where it helps us in our contacts, in our work, in our career. And on the other hand, we need to have offline contacts and interests as well to really keep being grounded, I think, to the real world. Otherwise, you might lose yourself into the screen. And that's not what we want.
I want to ask Bobby a question about the following. That is, how would we counsel a teenager these days who is really interested in leadership in the future, and the difference between number of followers on their Instagram versus to actually become capable of taking leadership in a sense of sharing leadership with their group, with their tribe, as opposed to a number of followers? There's a split between how popular they are on followers and their actual capacity to lead people in real time. Bobby?
That's a good question. I mean, one of the things that, now I'm at the age with the kids where I want to help focus on their leadership thing. So the first thing I ask them are, what are some of the problems in the world you want to solve? My son often talks about, instead of saying, what kind of job do you want? What are the problems in the world that bother you? My son's a harder person to talk to. He keeps a lot of things close and he doesn't really express himself. Whereas my daughter's like, blah, 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 blah. And my daughter has all these things she wants to solve, which is great. I love that.
I recognize that.
But for she's like her dad, so she's like out there. But my son, finally I found out that he's really concerned about the way we're treating our planet, and it took me a while to get to that, but he said that, and so I said, okay, well, what do you think we can do? And so it started to steer him into the idea of, maybe there's technologies we can create through my interest in coding that can, maybe help save the world. Maybe there's something to do with science that I can get involved in. And so we started thinking about those things and being an advocate for that. So it starts with that connection to talk about what are the problems in the world that you care about, that you want to focus on. Then the second thing is, supporting them on that. So, okay, so Raya wants to start a club. Niall wants to maybe volunteer at this thing. Fine, let me support them as best I can. And also help them find that balance, because obviously you can't, $1 million spent $1 to a million charities doesn't do very much. What are those? What's the way to spend $250,000 to 4 different charities? So where do we prioritize and spend our time to make those changes? And I think that instilling an idea of what are the challenges in the world that you see, and what are the ways in which you think you can help them. I think that's the first start of personal leadership. And then the second thing is really about how can you better yourself to create that impact that you want. So, I'll ask him, what can you better? And so one of the things we discovered for my son is that he said he wishes he could express himself better. I said, okay, yeah. And I'm glad he said that versus me saying that. I'm like, okay, great. What can we do? And so we talked about putting him in Toastmasters or doing some improv comedy to, learn about having some fun, but also expressing himself. And he was really, he said, that sounds great. I would really love to be able to express myself. He's like, I wish I could express myself as good as my sister can. Because whenever we fight, she always has the upper hand by making it look like I'm the bad guy. And I really don't like that. And I was like, wow, okay, that's really insightful. Let's work on that. So developing them with the support or a program or things like that, I think will go a long way to helping them. And I think that's probably the beginning of it. I mean, once they start to really get impact and get the results, then we can start looking at, okay, what kind of feedback, how can we continue to personally develop? One of the things I'm doing with my kids starting this year was I'm putting together a personal plan for them. What's the plan for 2022 in terms of what you want to do and how you want to grow as a person? Because I think personal development is also a huge thing. So I'm trying to teach them that personal development is, personal development is something we have to invest in ourselves. I'm a big believer that, we have to invest in ourselves to better ourselves. That's why I'm trying to be, healthier, lose weight. But also, I think that they have to think about how can we personally develop ourselves, and how can I support them. So I think about those things.
That's a great answer, Bobby. And before in the pre-chat, you came up with a beautiful point about the difference between being consumptive with social media as opposed to becoming creative. We're all content creators on social media, and I think getting that child's mind to think creatively, not just with problems in the world, but with themselves. How can I create the best version of myself? What steps do I need to do that? Really fires up the brain to think about how to better self as well as the environment around them. And a creative mind is always growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, so we looked at, there's consumption where you're just watching, a YouTube video. Then there's being creative or creation. So if he's on a scratch project doing some coding, or even if he's playing Minecraft and he's building a world, I find that to be a little bit better than, just the other variable is whether it's on a device like a laptop or a phone where you're looking really closely at something versus, the screen TV over there, and that's different as well. There's also the intensity, the amount of time. Is it 3 hours or is it just half an hour, right? And so balancing all those different things. So I'm teaching my kids about all those different variables. And, I give them opportunity to start their own YouTube channel and just have fun with it. And they had a blast. They started making these fun videos. They did like this egg drop, and seeing that creative process with them was amazing. And so I'm happy to give them those opportunities. My son wanted to do another YouTube channel where he talks about coding. And I'm like, yeah, you can totally do that. If you want to do that, like, if you really want to do that, I'll get you the equipment and you can set it up. And you probably teach me a couple of things. I'm not a techie, so you can learn that stuff and teach me how to do it. And then maybe my videos will be much more polished. So, I think that, again, it comes down to being constantly engaged with the kids, supporting them, communicating with them, listening to them, and playing with them and all the things they want to do. And again, find that balance. Like we can do technology things together, but we can also do stuff outside as well.
Absolutely. And I think the person that invented the wheel had to be tapped on the shoulder by the person who invented the cart, because the wheel by itself isn't that useful. You have to have something to it's attached to. And human beings are incredible in the way they can collaborate minds. And I think that's something else that I'm really hoping that we can encourage our younger generation, is instead of being isolated and alienated on a phone 2 inches from their face, they need to reach out and actually learn to collaborate again and do physical things like playing sports, which builds team spirit.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think we had a wonderful conversation today. I know I learned a lot, so thank you both for sharing your stories and your wisdom and your tools to our beautiful audience. Thank you so much. What are your plans today on Easter? I know it's early with you guys, right?
Yeah, I'm in Montreal visiting friends. So I'm going downtown Montreal to Old Montreal. There's a beautiful port there and water and place to walk around, beautiful old buildings and statues and cobblestone roads. And so I think that's going to be lovely. I think that'll be fun. Then we're going to go to another smaller part of town called Pointe Claire. It's a beautiful kind of old village to walk around, and then we'll come back home and hang with our friends that we haven't seen in probably, we're staying with the friends that we haven't seen in like 8 months. So we're just spending time with them and their kids. So yeah, I'm very, very happy to be here and enjoying the day.
Beautiful. You're going to share it on social media and we can see pictures?
Well, I share, it's interesting, like how things have changed. I used to post twice a day on LinkedIn, and now I post 3 times a week. I've kind of scaled that back. I focus on my newsletter, putting that out every couple of weeks because the newsletter has been really great.
Yeah.
So I'm actually supposed to post something yesterday or today. I haven't yet, so I might post something, but it won't be about the Easter today. I'm going to probably, most of the stuff I post about in terms of my personal life, I use Instagram stories, or I'll tweet it out and I'll just share that. That's why I love stories. That's why I wish LinkedIn would bring back stories, because it was a chance to share those random pictures from our lives, whether it's work lives or personal lives, and it starts a great conversation. So I really hope they bring that back, because I loved it, and I do it all the time on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too. Well, maybe on Facebook then. We have each other on Facebook. And I know
Sure. Well, yeah, I always share on Instagram and Facebook my stories, and that's where you see, oh yeah, here's Bobby doing this, and here's Bobby doing this, and that's where I shared mostly. On LinkedIn, I was doing it, but then they stopped stories.
Well, I'm very curious about Montreal and looking forward to seeing it. And Ashok, what are your plans for today?
Oh, well, I'm working on my third book. I'm collaborating with Hugh MacLeod. We're writing a book called based on leadership and empathy, which is my area. And so I'm trying to put in as much time I can on the weekends. And tonight we're having beloved friends come over who we travel with and show the world with for a beautiful Easter supper tonight. My kids are all out around the world. They live in different parts of the world. So we'll talk about them on our social media.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to keep in touch, especially in times when you cannot travel. So yeah, I had a nice Easter breakfast with the kids, went to visit my parents, and now after this, I'm just gonna enjoy some sun time in the yard, in the backyard, and then start cooking
Beautiful.
Easter dinner. So well, I'm wishing you both a lot of fun today with your plans. Again, thank you for joining on this Easter celebration day. And I want to thank everyone for watching today. And I'm really looking forward to our next show, which will be a little bit longer because I'm traveling soon. So the next show will be May 15th, just so you know. So thank you all for watching, and well, see you again on the next show. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.